Oh, 3 shots this morning. Oat milk, iced situation with an extra shot. Because why not? I got a busy day. I got stuff to do today. What's happening, everybody? What are you guys doing out there? Let's just double check. Somebody give me a thumbs up in the chat here that you can hear me okay. The audio's good. Still having little issues with my setup. But I think it's okay. I think it's working good. Sounds good, says yes, sir. I see what you did there. What's going on this week in the world of guitar? What happened? Making a video. I just noticed a hole up there in the rack because there was an amp there yesterday. There'll be another one there later today. But the one I was making a video for yesterday I took out because I'm done. It's a driftwood amplifier from Germany. Nice amp. Really great articulate high gain kind of amplifier, but no slouch in the lower gain department or the clean channel. It's got a great clean channel. Some really neat features as far as, okay, here's one. There's a built-in tube screamer. So if you're a metal player, that's like a dream come true because you can do the tightening, boosting tightening thing with the built-in screamer. 2 buffered effects loop, 2 master volumes, so you can switch between them. You can have a solo boost on master 2. But all this stuff, like the buffered effects loop, the master 2, the tube screamer, there's neat ways you can kind of preset them to happen at the same time. So without having a switching system or anything like that, let's say you're just using the amplifier's provided kind of 5-button foot switch that comes with it, you can switch to master 2 and you can have the effect loop come on and the tube screamer come on at the same time when you do that. You just assign them via this kind of big rotary switch on the back. It's cool because, like, let's say you primarily play, your clean channel, you got your dirty rhythm sound, and then for your lead sound, you maybe want to switch in a delay and you want more gain from the screamer and stuff and a volume bump. You can do that all just on the amp foot switch. Hit one button, go to master 2, you get the screamer comes on, your effect loop comes on, the master 2, of course, comes on with the, so you can have your, if you're like, yeah, I'm a player needs a few sounds. I don't need 5 million sounds. I need a great lead sound. I need a great dirty rhythm sound. I need a great clean sound. You don't want to deal with a switching system or whatever. You can kind of do that with that and just a little bit more gear, like add a delay, and you're done. Tuner output. Amp's got a tuner output on it. So you could also just add a tuner. You hit the mute on the amplifier, and it'll kick out to the tuner. And there's even a 9-volt DC power outlet on the back for the tuner. So you don't even need to buy like an extra power supply or anything like that. You can power the tuner right off the amp. Kind of interesting. Just a bunch of features that are, you may use or you may not use, but it's interesting. So anyways, I'm going to put out that video tomorrow. And it should be interesting, hopefully. I like the piece of music I came up with for it. It's got a vicious double bass, double kick drum thing in the middle. I really like that Steve Stevens Nags you played on the Empress pedal demo. I like it too. It's how much better it is than a Les Paul, like 25% better. Well, it's not that it's better. It's like, I consider it my kind of hot rod Les Paul. They did a great job on it. It's got a nice big fat neck. I don't even think of it like a Les Paul, to be honest. Isn't that weird? Because it kind of looks like one, and it basically is sort of similar, but it's a different animal. It doesn't feel like any of my Les Pauls that I have here in the sense that it's just the neck and the pickups are real hot. It's got the bare knuckle Steve Stevens set in it. I think they're called Rebel Yells, and just really, really, it's just my my hot rod Les Paul. When I need a guitar that has a JB strength kind of output pickup in the bridge, and I want mids, and I used it in the Dr. Feelgood. On that Dr. Feelgood track that I recreated for when I had Mick Mars' old Jose Marshall here, and I did the Dr. Feelgood track. I used it on that because he plays that pickup, I think, and it just seemed appropriate. It sounded really good on that. So anyways, it's the opposite of like my Yaren, which is like my Jimmy Page Les Paul, which has the all the sparkle and the big telly on steroids sound and all that. This guitar is like more like fist, So that's how I think of the Nags. It's my hot rod rock machine. I'm actually taking it on the road. I'm going to go out on tour with Nick Carter in a few weeks. I'm using it on a couple tunes because I've got it drop tuned in C sharp, and it's right for a couple things. Yeah. Yeah. Ryan says it was a blast with Jen last. Yeah, did you watch her? She had the second video in her new series, all about muting, was on this morning. So go check out Jen's channel if you haven't. She's doing some nice little kind of quick tips and tricks and stuff in a new series that she's going to do every Sunday. So the one that she did this week, she said, was inspired by a suggestion for me, which was all about muting, how you mute. You know, it seems obvious if you're a intermediate to advanced player. We mute with our left hand as well as our right hand, and how you do that to keep the strings quiet, keep things tight. But if you're new to guitar, or you find yourself maybe moving from acoustic to electric and you want to play dirty stuff, you're not used to that same muting technique maybe, because with the distortion and stuff, it, creates a whole new can of worms, whole new ball of wax, so to speak. Do you have any guitars with V63 Plus? V63 Plus. Is that a thing? I didn't even know that that is a thing. I mean, mine are just the V63s, which are the kind of maybe, these used to be the Landau pickups, and they called them the Landau Classic and the Landau Standard, and the Standard was a little hotter. So maybe V63 Plus is the same as the old Landau Standard. I don't know. Mine just have V63s, which I like. They seem perfect for me. So similar to the same as, I think, the old Landau Classic. Here's Lauren. Pedalboard with 68 pedals, reverb delay mods. Would you put the buxom boost at the front or at the end? Well, it just depends on what you want to do. You can put it in front of all that stuff like reverb delay and mod and stuff, and that's fine. But it really depends. The question is really if you want to put it at the end or if you want to put it before overdrives. Because if you have a clean boost and you run it into overdrives, or certainly into a compressor, it's just going to squish down more, right? Or it's going to just overdrive more, but you won't necessarily get a big volume bump. Right now I have a clean boost on my board, actually, that is just because I needed to. It was my Phase 90 was in loop 4 of my switcher, and on this tour I have coming up, I found myself not using the Phase 90 for anything, but I needed a clean boost for just a couple parts, and I'm like, where can I put the clean boost, and where can I have it so that it's easy to turn on and off within a preset, maybe. Anyway, I pulled the Phase 90 for now and put a Super Suite from Exotic on there, which is basically a tunable clean boost. It's got switches where you can switch in low mids, high mids, highs or lows, and you can kind of tune the EQ. I like to put in the mids. So the low mids and the high mids, I switch up, and then it gives you kind of a colored boost. It just sounds really good. But anyways, what was my point? I put that just because of where the one spot I had on my board, it's in loop 4. That actually comes before my main overdrive, which is the Unobtainium from Crazy Tube Circuits, which is in loop 5 and 6. It's 2 different pedals in one, and I can switch them independently of one another. So anyways, I'm getting long-winded here, but loop 5 is the Klon style boost of the Unobtainium. Loop 6 is the Steel String Singer Dumbly side. So if I run the clean boost into the Steel String Singer side, it's not that gainy. I don't have that overdrive set that gainy. It's just for like a light overdrive and about unity gain. And I'm finding I still get a volume bump because it's kicking the front end of the drive, but it's a cleanish drive. So I still get a bit of a volume bump as well as like a more saturated sound. So long story short, if you put a clean boost in front of a drive, it really depends on whether or not it's a distortion or a fuzz or a light overdrive, or what, you know what I mean? You might still get a bit of volume bump, but you might not. If you're going into probably a hard clip distortion pedal, you'll kick that distortion pedal and just saturate it more, and you'll get more of a high gain, more sustain and all that. Almost like having just like a hotter pickup in your guitar, just pushing harder, right? Now, if you want a volume bump all the time, and you run your amp clean with your pedals, then put it at the end of the chain, the buxom boost, and then it's going to give you as much as you want, like a big, You could probably, the amp's reasonably clean. It's all about how dirty the amp is. If the amp's clean with lots of headroom to spare, you can get like 10 dB of boost, and it'll get dramatically louder at the end of your chain, you know. Or you can get just a little bit, you know. It just depends what you want. Anyway. Tom says it's been a few weeks since he's been here. Where you been? No, good to have you back. Nice to have you here. What else are you guys talking about? Let's see. I would think the V63s would match better with the Thornbucker 2 in the bridge. You know, I just always liked the original Landau Classic, the sound of it. That's the pickup I liked. Like, so I think they're still probably like 6K. I mean, they're hot enough for me. I don't have to have like exactly matched pickups. I don't really care about that, to be honest. That might seem odd to some people, but I don't really care about the volume being exactly the same with the bridge humbucker or the neck single coil. If I want that, I can literally just pull the tone pod on my guitar, and I find then the parallel, because that'll switch the humbucker to parallel, and I find that perfectly balances with the single coils. It's about the same output then, it seems like, as the single coils. So that gives me that sound, and I use that a lot, the parallel sound. I find myself using it all the time. It's a really great sound, like just that bridge pickup in parallel by itself, totally cool. If I want a sparkly, it's not too thin or too, you know, weak or anything like that. Just the bridge pickup in parallel sounds great. It's a really cool sound. And then once again, it'll balance with the singles. When I hit the bridge pickup, when it's full series, you know, when I hit that tone pot down, it's louder, but I kind of want that. Like, it gives me another sound. The matching of volume all over the place. Sometimes I want the difference in volume because I want a cleaner sound. You know, I'm an old school player in many ways where I really like to use the volume control on the guitar and get a lot of different levels of gain out of the guitar. I don't want all the same volume coming out of the guitar and then to get everything on the amp or with my pedals. I love the old plexi way of being able to get, you know, clean up, and, you know, the way Eddie Van Halen or Angus Young or Jimi Hendrix or any of those people used to use the volume control on the guitar to get different levels of output out of the guitar in order to play different passages. Love that. So I'm not a person that needs every pickup to be perfectly balanced. But I do remember trying the Landau. It's not like I've done like extensive comparisons of these, but I remember trying the Landau Standards and Classics like probably 10 years ago and thinking I liked the way the resonant peak sounded and stuff on the Classic. It just seemed to sound great. My main, like, I have one in the neck position on my old Strat, my 63, because I had a dark sounding neck pickup on my 63 Strat. And John suggested I try the Landau Classic. He goes, you want something with a little more sparkle and air, but still similar output to what you had. Just try this pickup. And I loved it. And so that's what I'm basing it on. You know, in my green guitar, I had Landau Standards, which would be, I guess, what they... I'm guessing this, but I'm pretty sure that's what they probably call the V63 Plus now. I had the Standards, and I switched those pickups out because I didn't find them exceptionally stratty. I wanted a little bit more stuff, you know, coming out of that guitar. That guitar, I believe, now has V60 LPs in it, to be honest. But I don't actually remember. I've switched pickups in it, and I can't... I think that's what's going on. Anyways, blah, 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 blah. What was the name of the amp you spoke about? So it's this amp called a Driftwood. I'll have a video coming out for it tomorrow. For those just joining now, I was telling a bit of a story about an amp that I did a video for that isn't behind me because I took it out. I finished it last night, this video, but it's in the hallway. It's a Driftwood 100-watt amp, handmade in Germany. Very nice amplifier with some unique features. So you'll see the video for it tomorrow. But it's got a great articulate, high-gain sound. Nice kind of hard rock metal amp, but not a one-trick pony either. Yeah, it's called the Purple Nightmare is the name of it. He does some cool ones in, like, flame fronts, too. Like, he's got some flamed wood fronts, and I saw a purple one, and it was like, wow, that looks kind of badass. I thought it's pretty cool. There's a super chat there. I should grab that. Why don't I just grab that? Why don't I just do that right now? It's Simon. Hey, man, how are you? The Ocean Turquoise signature HSS you posted a picture of. I just couldn't resist it, so I bought it. Get out of here! Did you really? Oh, that's so cool. I don't even have one. You might have the very first one, the only one, I think. That's really cool, Simon. Send me a picture of it when you get it and stuff, or you with it or something. I'd love to see it. And that's so awesome. That's so cool. Where was it? Was it at Peach? It was in the UK, right? I think it was at Peach. Great store, UK. That's awesome, Simon. Thank you for getting it. And I'm glad you were the guy that got it. That's really cool. That makes my day. Oh, the other thing that made my day that I got to talk about today. Oh man, I was so stoked for my buddy. He posted this morning on Instagram. I'm going to find it here. Well, let's just go right to the source here that I saw this. I woke up yesterday morning to this post on the AC/DC Instagram. And I was reading, in a daze, because you wake up, Instagram, let's look at Instagram, right? And it said, power up for Power Trip. Power Trip's this big show that's happening out in the desert here soon. Listen to the rehearsal of the boys powering up with Cliff Williams, of course, AC/DC bass player, a longtime bass player that had retired, but has come back for at least this one show, because that's all they have in the books right now. But he says, the boys powering up with Cliff Williams, who's coming out of retirement for the festival, and Matt Logg on drums. And I would have fallen out of bed if I was on the edge of the bed. But anyways, Matt Logg. Matt Logg played on Dirty Town on my last solo album. He's one of my old friends in LA that I've known since probably the 90s. And Matt Logg, many of us for 20 years or so have said, like, if AC/DC ever needs a drummer, because Phil Rudd is like the heart of AC/DC. I mean, they've had, Simon as well and Chris Slade, but Phil Rudd, man, I mean, he's like the heartbeat of AC/DC. But we always said, if they have another drummer, wouldn't it be amazing if it was Matt Logg? Because he is the guy. Matt Logg, he played in Slash's Snake Pit, and he's also toured with, I think his name is Vasco Rossi. He's a huge Italian rock star, so that's been his gig for a number of years now. But he also does a lot of sessions and stuff in LA. Matt has serious chops, like in the 80s and whatnot. He was a hard rock metal drummer, I think, and worked really hard on double bass technique and on his all that stuff, like chops. But when he got into the 90s, he just went another direction. He went, you know what, this is all like not really. I think he was just like, this isn't what's important. Groove is what's important. Laying it down and just feel. And he just started to play grooves and practice feel and do that. And it was like, that's what he's kind of known for, is his great, big, fat, awesome rock pocket. That when you play with certain drummers, there's this magic thing that happens where you don't have to really think anymore. You don't have to, you're just playing. It's kind of like Jimmy Page could play around John Bonham and be ahead or be behind or whatever. It didn't matter because the groove was so fat, right? That's the way Matt Logg plays. And there's a lot of Phil Rudd in his playing, and there's a lot of, Bonham and that kind of like just that style of like just straight up the middle. And his friends at some point, I think it was for his birthday or something, they made him a drum head. And you can see it on his, because go check out his it's his Instagram picture. There it is right there. So it looks like the Miller Lite logo. And it says Matt Logg. It's his bass drum head. And it says Matt Logg, and down here in the corner it says great taste, less fills. Miller Lite, great taste, less filling. Matt Logg, great taste, less fills. So anyways, recently he's been the drummer also in Mike Campbell's band, the Dirty Knobs. So after Tom Petty, unfortunately, passed away, it's terrible, Mike went full on into Dirty Knobs and just doing that, making records and touring and stuff. And Matt was the drummer in Dirty Knobs for a long time. He ended up leaving, I think, about a year ago or maybe a little more, just due to Vasco Rossi, who's this massive Italian artist and huge stadium tours and stuff like that. And Matt went that way and did that tour. But anyways, also played a show when Steve Ferrone was ill and getting treatment, I believe, for cancer. I believe he was getting treatment during this time. I hope I'm not misquoting any of this, but I'm pretty sure that's what was going on. He played a show, I'm talking about Matt, with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So well before, a couple of years before Tom passed away, they did a show at the Troubadour in L.A., and Matt was on drums. So probably the only drummer to have played with both AC/DC and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Probably. Absolutely. Anyways, I'm just so over the moon for Matt. Now, I know there's probably going to be a lot of fans that are like, why is Phil not there? Why is Phil not there? I mean, I would be like that too, because that's what, as rock fans, it's like, a rock band is like a team. It's like a gang, and you want to see when it's Led Zeppelin, you want to see Bonham on drums. That's why they just kind of really didn't ever do it again, except for that, couple little one-offs in that show in 2008. That's just how it is, It's like it's a team, it's a gang. So of course you want to see Phil on drums, but we always said if Phil can't be there, Matt is the guy. And it's like this dream. How's that ever going to happen, right? Well, it happened, and it's an interesting kind of way that it, there was kind of inroads, I think, into that camp. That they share some crew with McCartney, and the McCartney folks know. The AC/DC folks, and this fellow Matt is good friends with some of the McCartney folks. But anyways, I think that's how it probably all came about. It's just fascinating to me, though, that you see a guy that you just know is so perfect for something, and then it ends he ends up in one of your I don't know. This stuff is not lost on me. If you watch the Dirty Town video from my last record, John Button's on bass and Matt Logg is on drums. John Button plays in The Who, and Matt Logg plays in AC/DC. These are two of my favorite bands. My obviously, right? Growing up, it's this is what formed me, And now you just stick in the game long enough, like these guys did, and you end up where you're supposed to be, in a natural. It's just an amazing thing, right? It sounds naive or it sounds too good to be true, but it's actually true. Those two guys are both playing, in those bands now, and stadiums, arenas, whatever, huge festival that Matt's going to do with AC/DC. I just can't believe it. I'm so stoked for him. It's a great thing to be so excited for one of your friends, and just be feeling over the moon all day long. I texted him multiple times yesterday, and later in the day, by 4 p.m. because I woke up to it. I'm texting him. I'm like, I still can't believe this. I'm still just so stoked for you. I've been so happy all day about this for him, and I just can't wait to see him do it. And he's so perfect for it. He even looks right for the band. When you see him, he's got long hair, and he's kind of just it's it just fit right in. I know it, and it's going to be a cool thing. So, anyways, okay. Thanks for listening to my tirade about how stoked I am for my friend Matt Logg jamming with AC/DC. Best amp to get Van Halen tone for a $500 to $600 budget. I think that, to be honest, the little original Roland, they had a cube that was out, not the original one from the 80s or whatever, but the one that was out, I have a little mini cube, micro cube, that was probably, $199 or something. That on the brown setting with a bit of delay or reverb, it sounds kind of awesome. It's got a lot of fans, that little amp. Now, I know Paul Gilbert has been doing a bunch of stuff for Positive Grid lately, because he said that one of his students or fans or something that sent him a video, he's like, what amp is that? Because he loved it. And then he loved these little Positive Grid amps, so he's using that. There's those. I'm doing a video for a really, really nice combo. That's, I don't know how much it is, but it's not expensive. It's not come out yet. It's sitting here, but I can't show it to you. It'll be out in 3 days. Really, really good amp that's got a great drive channel, and terrific built-in verb. Actually, it's a combo, 112 combo. It's all tube, and it sounds really good. There's so much good stuff now. So watch for that this week, because that might be interesting to you as well. One of the little 15-watt lunchbox EVH heads would probably be really good on it. Maybe you could find one used, and just use the blue channel. And the blue channel on the Van Halen amps always has kind of the fairly good approximation of the Van Halen tone. The the red channel is always a little hot and MIDI to me for that, or just certain mid-range. But the blue channel is kind of where it's at with the right pickup and all that. Okay. Yeah. Oh, this is amazing. I was rehearsing next door to them when they were doing the auditions in London. Matt sounded amazing. I didn't know that. I don't know anything about the story. It's been under wraps, and very few people knew about it. But yesterday I just woke. So he was keeping it quiet. He didn't tell anybody that his friends and stuff. And well, maybe there was a couple people that knew, I think. But anyways, that's really interesting. Tell us more, T-Top, about what you heard them play and stuff. I'd love to. Who did anybody else come out for the gig? I'm so curious. Tell us more. And Tom Lynn says no Phil Rudd. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with Phil. Some of the speculation has been like legal issues from the court case that he had years ago and the kind of bad situation that he got him in. Maybe he can't come to the U.S. and stuff right now. So I know he went to Canada to make the Power Up record, the last record, but maybe that's why they did it in Canada. I don't know. I know they recorded it, I think at the Warehouse, in Vancouver. But anyways, tell us, T-Top. Tell us. Simon says you'll send me a pic of the guitar. He got one of my signature guitars in ocean turquoise, the only one that's been made so far, I think. They're getting out there, though. There's quite a few of the silver ones out in the world now. Or should I say Inca silver. I never had the problem some have with the strap volume knob placement, but I just got a new Ultra Strat. I swear you could breathe on it to turn the volume. Tips on tightening up the sweep. Well, you probably got to try a different pot. Pots have been a bit of a mess lately. Although what we're using in my signature guitar now, I'm so sold on. They're amazing because CTS for a long time been a problem. They just get dirty and they start crackling really quickly, and it's a drag. So we switched on my guitar a while back, and I've road tested these pots for over a year now, and they make no noise. They're so good, and they stay super good. But I'm just not actually sure what it is, so that doesn't help you right now if I tell you to replace the pot. But yeah, you might have to get just a different. You might want to try I think the Dunlop Super Pots are supposed to be pretty good. You might want to check that out. Different pots, they do have the different tension and stuff, and I don't know of a way to tension them. It's just kind of how they are from pot to pot. So you might want to go to a store that has a good selection of parts, or just, they're relatively inexpensive. I mean, you could probably spend $20 and buy a couple and see if you can find something. Ben Tom says you need to get one of those tiny rubber bands they use for the bracelets on kids' bracelets. That'd be interesting. A little retrofit kind of pot hack. Not pot, but pot. Pot hack. So weird that I'm a drummer, but I've never heard of this guy. Well, Matt stayed pretty low profile. He's a little like Tim Pierce in that he cultivated a studio career. So much like Tim, until he started doing YouTube and stuff, he's a little bit behind the scenes. He did Slash a Snake Pit. That's going back a long time, though, now. I mean, 20 years at least, maybe more. Late 90s, early 2000s, before Slash went to Velvet Revolver. And then largely studio stuff. And he had a pretty good, playing on a ton of stuff in the studio. He would only go on tour if it was really, really lucrative. So he just that's just how he decided to roll. The same way Tim did. He knew he had to be in town, be there. When producers call, you got to be around, or they'll call somebody else. So you can't go on the road, really. So he cultivated that in town, and he's played on a ton of records. But he's absolutely one of my favorite rock drummers that I've ever played with. He's really incredible. That's why I had him on Dirty Town. You can hear him in the Dirty Town video. Here's a great story. Okay, Dirty Town has double bass, Hot for Teacher. Right? I sent him a demo of the track, and he's like, "Oh, I got to dust off my double bass pedal for this." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even think about it beyond that." He showed up at the studio the day that we were recording. Line 6 was doing a thing with me, and they wanted to film a video of that day. So, and I'm really sad that they didn't have I'm like, why didn't we have a cam in the drum room while he was cutting drums. And I'm sad about that now, but you can see him through the glass. So in the video, cutting his drum part. So anyway, we tracked. He played down a killer track. He probably got it second or third take. You know, we got a killer drum and bass take and a decent, you know, take of me. And anyways, we're packing up. You know, the whole day was only like, you know, I think 4 or 5 hours in the studio to track and shoot that video. And he's packing up, and he's like looking at the double bass pedal as he's putting it in his case. You know, kick drum pedal, because he played a single kick, but with the double bass pedal. He's putting the pedal. He's like, man, I don't even think I've seen this thing for like 20 years. And I go, wait a minute, you haven't played double bass in like 20 years, and you just played that track down? And he goes, no, I don't think so. Yeah, probably 20 years. He didn't need to practice. He didn't need to. He just came in and did it, and he hasn't used his double kick pedal for like 20 years. So there you go. He's just like a talented, you know, like listen to the drums on that song. He kills it, and it's like he literally hadn't even played like that in that long. So it was really cool. But yeah. There's a super chat I got to grab there. Looking for that. Just one second. Just one second. Just picked up a Fender Aerodyne HSS Dolphin Gray. Great Japanese built guitar. Fender Japan is awesome. We'll upgrade the pickups. Okay. See, amp manufacturers should put in amp modeling and or capturing in the front end of preamp section and tubes in the power. I mean, maybe. Kind of an interesting idea, I guess. I guess synergy is kind of the, you know, analog version of that. But it sounds complicated to me. But you never know. It's Camp there. No comment or anything, but a super chat. Thank you, my friend. Which amp do you think is more reliable, the Marshall DSL 40 or the Vox AC30? Well, traditionally, I would say the Marshall, because it probably doesn't. I mean, the AC30s are kind of legendary for being somewhat unreliable because they run really hot and stuff. But a modern AC30, I'm sure, is just as reliable as a Marshall DSL 40. Ultimately, probably neither of them are the most robust, like modern versions, I'm saying, are the most, you know, your mileage may vary, you know, it just depends. But, you know, they're not built quite like a Friedman or Sir or something, you know. One of my amps, you know, thick PC boards and the way they're built, just everything else. But probably similar. I wouldn't say that reliability, if I was going to buy one of those, wouldn't probably factor into my decision. I would just say just keep tubes around, especially on an AC30. You want to keep a spare set of, and for those you don't have to buy us, so just keep a set of EL34s around, especially if it's a tube rectifier. Don't discount the possibility of the rectifier failing. I've had a couple rectifier tubes go over the years, and so if it's tube rectifier, just keep a spare set of tubes and fuses around. How is the Signature HSS wired up? Anything special about the pots? Just the series parallel in the tone pot. So that you can, you know, it'll tap the bridge pickup in position 2. And the push-pull will put the bridge pickup in parallel. So that's the only kind of crazy wiring, but it's not really crazy, but it works really well. Yeah. PV6505 from the 2010s in great shape. No foot switch. I mean, that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. What's a 6505 MH? Is that just like the standard head? I mean, it's basically a 5150, right? So, I would say I mean, 285 is hard to go wrong. I'm sure you can get your money back out of it if you don't like it. Some of you guys are suggesting for EVH tone around $500-600. The EVH Iconic 15 watt for tube, Spark 40 for digital. Yeah, I'd say those are good suggestions for an inexpensive amp. Yeah. PDX Guitar says, Yes, I love the Blue Channel Red too much. Yeah, the Blue Channel's good on the Van Halen amps. Uh-huh. Ecstasy Blue, says Ben Tom. I don't really think so. I think an Ecstasy is too polite compared to... It's a great sound, the Blue Channel. It's a little lower gain, and I would say it's a little muted on the top end. It's a really nice sound to sit and play with, though, by yourself, but it's not as aggressive as... You know, that's... I mean, I used to have one, so I'm basing it on experience, but I had a 101B years ago, and I found it to be good sounding when you're sitting playing, like a nice sound. Somebody that I trust described it as an amp. It sounds like an amp that's already been recorded coming out of studio monitors when it's coming out of the cabinet. That was my only thing with it. You know, a Helios is probably more like going to get you more in the zone, I would think, if we're talking Bogner. Okay. What else are we talking about here? Let's see. Are you Canadian? Yeah, originally. I'm dual. I mean, I'm a Yank and I'm a Canuck. But I grew up in Canada. What else we got here? One of my favorite amps is a Fender Pro Tuner, completely stock. Isn't that what Beck used primarily, along with a bigger Marshall? But I think the Pro Junior was mic'd a lot and in the PA. Great sounding amps. You know what? Okay, here's another sleeper. Okay. Oh, I shouldn't even tell you. I kind of want to go buy one. All right, I'm going to tell you. The PV Classic 20 from the 90s for a similar thing. A great little fire breather of a combo tweed situation. What a great sounding little amp. Not to be confused with the Classic 30, which I got later and didn't sound the same at all to me. The Classic 20 is very special, though. Have you ever met Alex Lifeson? Once. At a Sloan show in L.A. on Hollywood Boulevard. It's a strange place to meet a member of Rush. But yeah, Sloan was playing at a weird club upstairs on... For those who don't know, Sloan, great Canadian indie rock band. The Canadian indie rock band. They were playing an upstairs club thing in Hollywood, and it was so interesting place to see Sloan, and then Alex was there. So and I met him, and he was very nice. But just got to say hello and shake his hand. It was an honor. That's 20 years ago, probably. Crazy. Yeah. What's the name of the finish on your Black Sparkle signature guitar? Oh, I've got one of those coming soon, I hope. It is called Charcoal Metallic, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's it. It'll be on the website, but yeah, I think that's the name of it. It looks really cool. Is there an actual sound difference between the SL67 and 68? When I compare a 50 watt to 100 watt plexi style amps, it's a headroom thing and a boldness thing and a compression thing. They just sound a little more the 100, and the 50 sounds a little more, not small, but it's just, there's a compression to it and a little less, you know, they're just a little more compact, but it's a minor thing, you know, and probably 3 dB different in volume. But there's something about the 100 watt that definitely, it sounds a little different, you know? It's got its own thing. Just a little more huge. They're both great. One's not better than the other. It's just different. Okay. They were setting up when we were rehearsing. When we got back 3 days later to tip back into our storage, they were just starting Thunderstruck. That's awesome. Talking about the AC/DC drum audition situation. London, eh? Interesting that it was in London. So interesting. Very interesting. So here's more of the story. We were all hiding in the storage locker, listening through the walls like little kids. I don't know who else they auditioned. Well, that's cool. They were playing with Matt. Man, Thunderstruck. That's probably the most fun song I get to play with Classic Rock Show. So much fun to play that. Would your good friend John Sir ever consider selling his guitars through Long and McQuaid in Canada, or not a chance? I don't think that they... I think they always consider options. I think that probably the Sir tends to align themselves with smaller, slightly more. Well, not, I mean, they're at Cosmo in outside Toronto, which is massive, you know. But Cosmo is not a big chain like Long McQuaid. It's a little bit more of a. It's not a boutique music store per se. It's a great big music store, but they're a little more like Peach in England. You know, where it's a great big music store that's got boutique all the way through to beginner stuff. But they're a little more aligned with those dealers, and they've got great dealers in you know, this is Cosmo for Ontario. There's a great store in Edmonton called Stang Guitars that I love. I'm spacing on the name. I always do this, but they've got a great dealer in Calgary. I'm sorry, guys. I can't remember the name of the store right now, but a quick Google search would solve that. There's a dealer in Vancouver. I mean, they're pretty well represented in Canada right now, and I think they tend to try. I can't speak for the company, but maybe there's a not putting all their eggs in one basket kind of thing. Which when you're with one big retailer that, you know, like an L&M. There's nothing wrong with L&M. I like them, but they're everywhere, you know. And they're a little more like a Guitar Center. Like in the States, Sir is in some Guitar Centers, in the Pro room, the Platinum room, or whatever. I know they're in Nashville, they're in LA here, which is great because you can actually go to Hollywood and try my amp, you know, in the Hollywood store. I'm very happy about that because for a long time there wasn't a great dealer in town for amps for them. But it's only select locations, you know. They're not everywhere. So, and I think they like to do that and stick with kind of the more boutique kind of shops, you know. Anyways. What's this? Hope you're well. I am well, thanks. In one of the videos you did about the Fryette attenuator, you mentioned about the amp output and the speakers. If you crank a 100-watt Marshall, would it push more wattage? Amp output and the speakers. Well, I don't really understand the question, but you know, a 100-watt Marshall puts out in excess of 100 watts. So yeah, you kind of are riding on the hairy edge if you're just using 4 greenbacks. Now, I've talked to the folks at Celestion, and they say our modern speakers can handle it. Like if we say 100 watts RMS, then it'll handle 100 watts. Like you don't need to worry. You can run a 100-watt amp into 4 greenbacks. I would still err on the side of caution, especially if you're playing really loud. You know, if I was playing Van Halen cranked all the time with no variac, and or you know, especially if I was in like a, you know, I don't know, some sort of indie band pushing a fuzz or something into the front of the amp, square wave just all the time, just really loud, you know, and cranking it. How many people do that these days? Though not very many. So, but yeah, when it comes to wattage, you just, the conventional wisdom used to be the cab should be double the power of the amp. So, you know, 200 watts of power handling for a 100-watt Marshall. That's why kind of they used to do a full stack, you know, 2 cabs with 1 head. And then a 50-watt, you know, in their advertising, they would show 1 cab with a head. That's kind of loosely what they used to do, I think. So Jim from Scumbag Speakers used to say, yeah, get, you know, the higher power 65-watt versions of my greenbacks if you want to run a 100-watt head into a 412 and be safe. He was very sort of conservative, always careful about that. In my experience. Can you share anything about the session you were excited about a few weeks back? No, actually, I'm still waiting to find out what's going on with that, so I can't. I hope it turns into something, but I'm kind of forgotten about it, to be honest, because I do that with cool things. I like to just put it out of my mind in case nothing ever happens, you know? Yeah. I highly recommend that. With things that may or may not happen, just don't get your hopes up too much because it can be shitty, you know, the letdown. It's tough. Rollcamp says, I've been watching. I know you're always here, and I appreciate you. Thank you for being here all these years. Always enjoy the shows. Thanks. I do too. Just got 5150 Stealth, 50 watt. Planning to get MXR Echoplex delay in front. Would it be a good choice for the carbon copy? If you want Van Halen, the Echoplex. I like the carbon copy. I think it's nice. It's quite dark. It's a more analog sounding. So analog versus tape is analog's darker. It's a true analog delay, the carbon copy, and it's got a dark, a little more murky repeats. The Echoplex is going to be brighter and more snappy, more tape. Colored, but not necessarily dark is the way I would describe it. Yeah. Yeah. This is cool about my buddy Matlock. Mike Campbell calls him a clock with soul. I would say that. Yeah, his time is like impeccable. He's like a machine, but he's got soul, He's got a great feel. His playing's amazing, man. One of my favorite drummers. Absolutely. Okay. Moving through the chat here. What else you guys talking about? Oh, there's a super chat. Just pick up a Japan, James Tyler, and it's incredible. How would the USA version be any better? Yeah, I mean, I feel that way many times about, like, for instance, my Yaren, it's like such a good Les Paul that I feel like it satisfied my... I mean, when you play an old one, you're still like, oh man, this guitar is really cool. Like an old, James has the old guitar bug from Classic Rock Show, and he's always showing up with different, he's got a 57 Les Paul, real one, and he had a 59 Junior. He's always buying and selling stuff. He has this one really cool refinished red top with a Bigsby with two P90s, maybe a 54 that had been refinned. And he'll go, here, try it. And I'll be like, oh, God, I don't even want to try it. And I'll plug it into my rig, and I'll go, oh, this friggin' guitar, it sounds so good. And, and then I want it, But it's like, even refinned, it's like, $20,000 or whatever. And I'm like, God, don't show me these things, But my Yaren, the point being, it just kind of like scratched that itch a lot. Like, where I'm like, well, this guitar's amazing. Like, how good is a real one gonna be, like a 58 or 59 or whatever compared to this, will it really be? Because I love that guitar. So if I'm saying, if you feel that way about your Tyler, like, just play music, man, and don't worry about it. Just be like, yeah, I got it. Like, I lucked out. I got a killer guitar. I don't got to think anymore. It's a great thing when you feel like you don't have to keep chasing the gear, When you get a great guitar and you're like, or amp or whatever it is, and you're like, I'm so happy with my sound right now and the way it feels, and I'm just gonna play, It's a nice thing. That coming from me. Kind of funny, but I do feel that way. Have you watched the Noel Gallagher video on the Gibson channel? I have not. I watched that pedal show one, which I really thoroughly enjoyed. I love Noel. Big fan. And I like Liam too. I like Oasis, and I like them individually, and I like them together. They're really funny, and they've aged in a cool way, I think. So, okay. Do you ever feel that digital modelers could be too complicated? 100%. Yeah, absolutely. They're really good. I mean, they sound great and stuff, but there is a learning curve, and it's like, I guess once you get into the ecosystem and you get good at it, it's probably not a big deal, But it's just getting into that ecosystem and the constant maybe need to tweak. I don't know. That's what I love about the Quad Cortex. I've found it to be the easiest to use for me. So, other ones are relatively, I mean, the Helix is pretty easy, How long is the Carter tour going to be? Right now, it's just a few weeks in October, but we'll see if he decides to do more. Just depends, I think. I messed up the super chat page, but I didn't send the question. Oh, go ahead and just ask me, my friend. What did you want to ask me? I'll look for it here in the... we'll get to it. I'm sorry about that. Does anyone try and shape their own tones these days? I feel like I always hear of some person wanting another person's tone. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's a thing. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I kind of shape my own tone for my sounds. I mean, I love working on, like chasing a Brian May thing or an Eddie Van Halen thing, but I've got my own amp that's voiced for me. So, I feel like the pedals I choose and the sound that I hear when I go out and gig, it's my own thing, for the most part. So, that said, it's harder to have an original guitar sound these days, especially if you're into tube amps, because they kind of everybody did it, and now we're 70 years on from back when Richie Blackmore was boosting a AC30 or a Marshall with a Kai tape deck, or the treble booster showed up, and we had Rory and then Brian May, taking that tone as far as you could take it, kind of, it was the age of innovation, and it's different now. It's like, but that almost comes off me even saying it. It sounds like an excuse. I don't know. I mean, there's still ways that you can come up with original tones, and when I see bands like the I don't know, Black Keys or something, and they're using interesting sounds, with different older amps, tube amps and stuff, but cool pedals and getting great tones. Ty Tabor, man, that guy had a great original tone with not typical gear, Yeah. A couple super chats there. I should try and grab those. There's Jen. What's up? How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. If you're still here, maybe you had to take off. Did you play street hockey as a kid? No. I didn't really play hockey. I loved to skate, but I was kind of shitty at it. I could skate forwards really good, but I never got skating backwards down, and I didn't really play hockey. But I can still get on a pair of skates and ice skate. I'm all right at it. Never played hockey, though. I was just a music nerd. Let's see. A lull in the chat. My theory is that Pete misses Canada so much he subliminally designed a Canadian flag on the back wall. It's actually probably kind of true. Yeah, I know. I didn't even think of it, to be honest, but somebody else designed these panels, I gotta say. Maybe they were a Canadian nut. Guitar Works. I do believe that is the name of the store that carries Sir in Calgary. Yeah. It's been a minute. I did a clinic there, and I'm sorry, I just forgot. West Coast Guitars in Vancouver. Maybe that's the name of the Vancouver dealer. Never been there. Is Long and McQuaid independent, or is it like Guitar Center? It's like Guitar Center in Canada. It's a big chain, A great store. My first guitar came from Long and McQuaid in Edmonton, to be honest. My Hondo Strat and my little trainer amp. That's where my mom got them when I was a kid. Do you use the same speaker configuration as the matching PT15, Greenback and V30? Oh, you guys are talking amongst yourselves. That is the configuration in the PT15. It's also the configuration in my Signature 412s. Greenbacks on the top, V30 on the bottom. Who else we got here? Do you still use your UA aux? Is it still viable? It's totally still viable. I haven't used it a lot recently. Just most of my stuff, to be honest, recently has been done with a real cab, mic'd. I'm just really happy with that setup right now. So especially since I got this new microphone, and yeah. Truite says, when you use the super distortion for the Van Halen stuff, how far did you set it from the strings? I don't think super close. When I did that in that pickup video, for example, somebody else was setting up the guitar, and they just kind of handed it to me, and I brought it back here. They do have a lot of bass, so you're probably going to want to be careful about how close they're like, it's beefy sounding, which is part of that You Really Got Me sound, and why I think it's a super distortion, or Mighty Mite version of it. But yeah, so you just, on the bass side, you're probably going to want to angle it down a little bit at least, just because they're they got a lot of top end and a lot of bass. They're really big sounding. Have you tried the Boss DM101 yet? I haven't. That's their newish delay pedal. That's not the SD 3000, but no, I actually haven't had a chance to do that yet. Can you talk about some of Steve Vai's guitar tones? Like, fundamentally, what is it? Well, when I spoke with him, he said that he went through a period where originally it was Marshalls and, Jose Marshalls and stuff with Vai, and, moving into Whitesnake touring and stuff, I think still. And then, like, eventually he realized, like, this is coming right from, the horse's mouth. He was like, I realized I'm the lead singer and I have to have a sound that I'm comfortable with playing, lead guitar, being the lead voice. for, a couple hours when I'm up there, and that's what you're hearing. And I think he found the Marshalls to be a little bit aggressively high MIDI, that kind of thing. So then he was trying other things. So that's when he went to the Bogner, and for a while Soldano. And he said, as he described it to me, he said, I used each of these amps kind of for a season or so and trying different things, And then eventually the Legacy. Now, I think the Legacy was largely based on the Bogner. It's a little bit contradicting myself from earlier, but for his sound, a little bit more like that Ecstasy thing, which is darker, a little smoother, a little more polite, actually probably fits for what he was doing with the little bit less aggressively top, that sort of thing. It makes sense. When you play a chord or chords, which is what most of us do for most of the night, a brighter sound with a little less thick can be a good thing, because all the single notes, in the chord, all the notes of a chord ringing together will be clearer, more articulate. If you have a darker sound that's a little fatter and thicker and a little more low mid-range, it can be a little muddier and a little less articulate. I don't really like that sound for chording. But for lead guitar, if that's your primary thing, having a singing, fat single note voice on the guitar can be a really good thing. So I think that's what he kind of moved towards. So you say, like, what fundamentally is it? You're asking for gear specifics. I'm talking a little bit more philosophically. No matter what he was doing, I think that's the sound that I garnered, that he was saying that he was trying to move towards. A little bit more of a throaty, articulate, but not too bright, full mids, great big single notes. And so when you hear a Legacy or the Synergy, I have his Synergy module right here. And it is very unique sounding and different. It's got its own thing going on. And I do find it's great for that liquid, single note, that kind of thing. So big single notes. It makes sense. Ben Tom says he almost scored a Marshall a couple weeks ago, but it went quick. They do sometimes, yeah. When will your next Sir signature amp come out? I can only speculate, but I would say we're a year out, yeah, probably a year. I'm what are we now? We're August, maybe not that long. Maybe it'll be next June or something. We've got a lot of it, mapped out, but it just takes some time. So I got to talk to John about it a little more and find out where we're at on it, and if we're on track as far as that timeline goes. Things take time. I used to get a little push on it and I kind of just don't know. I just sort of, it's I feel better not worrying about it so much and just kind of letting the amp thing, the guitar thing is one thing, like I'm really into that being, amps I've backed off a lot just because I feel like it's the primary focus. I feel like with Sir is guitars, and I always want to have a cool offerings as far as signature guitar goes and stuff with them. Amps, I feel the same way, but I'm just less aggressive about it these days, about worrying about it. When the amp comes, it'll come, I can't think about it any other way. Maybe it's that I also opened myself up here to doing videos for amps, sort of because of these things, and maybe that's chilled me out in that regard, because now I can try other things and make videos of them and stuff and do, and when my signature thing gets done, and that all helps inform, because it gives me ideas, trying all these different amplifiers gives me ideas for what I like in my, it's like, oh, maybe we, not stealing things, but it's like when you see a feature or something that makes sense, it's only natural. You're like, well, maybe we could come up with a variation of that or something. So it's good for my own education as well. So that's probably chilled me out a little bit, just opening up to doing that. Do you feel like the advantages of wet-dry translate into live settings? I have a fairly strong opinion about that. For me, I really like using a stereo rig these days and not the wet-dry thing, but wet-dry is awesome. I just think if you're going to go the full Monty 3-cabinet thing with 3 microphones and stuff, you best be in a band like Van Halen, where you're the guitar player. There's guitar, bass, drums, maybe a keyboard player, probably no other guitar player. Then it really translates and makes sense. You can have a massive guitar sound panned out across the whole stereo field, like Eddie did. Once he went wet, dry, wet. You're not competing with any other instruments. It just makes sense. If you're, in a band with another guitarist, or sometimes it can be better to just have a mono rig if you're in a big band. I've said that about the Don Henley band. Like if I was ever to do Don's gig again, I would just go mono. It doesn't really make sense when you're in a band with a couple keyboard players and 2-3 guitar players, and you need to find your space then. So that's when it translates. That's my answer, is that I feel like it translates if you're in a band where you need a massive guitar sound and you're the primary focus harmonically, and then it's really worth it. It can sound great. If I could pick one workhorse amp with good clean headroom and light breakup for the studio, what would I recommend? Light breakup. I mean, for me, light breakup, workhorse. There's so many ways to go, man. I mean, I'm trying to think what's your budget, and are you more into Vox style stuff, or I mean, like that amp is for if you want a Vox, for example. My top hat there will do beautiful sparkly cleans, Voxy style cleans, and then it'll also do great grindy stuff. So that's great for that. My amps, have run the gamut from like super clean, lots of headroom, American stuff, all the way through to super high gain and anywhere in the middle. So PT15 or the 100 will do that, But it more depends on your budget and the like. Oh well, I like this style of clean. Excuse me, and this style of light breakup. Like light breakup could be, a cranked up Fender Deluxe, or it could be a top boost AC30 on 4, and they're very different sounding. So it just depends on what you mean, I think, for an accurate answer. Okay, there's a super chat. Using the PT15 into the PT212, which has 70-watt speakers. The PT212, which one? If it's the horizontal one, the original one that we came out with, it's Creamback 75s, which sounds great with a PT15. If it's the dedicated PT15 cabinet that is a little bit more like the, a small Marshall-looking one, that's a greenback in the top and then a V30 at an angle in the bottom. What would I listen for to tell if speakers aren't getting pushed enough? Oh, I wouldn't really worry about that. Aren't getting pushed enough. I mean, it always seems to settle in when you turn it up a little bit. Like, oh, now I always say that it sounds like the speakers are moving a little bit now. It can sound a little flat, and then all of a sudden you turn it up to a point and then you start to feel a bit of thrust. Or maybe it's just volume, but to me it's like, I've said that in the past, like, oh, it sounds like we're moving the speakers now. Like they're starting to move a little bit, which is a better sound to me. It's an intangible though. It's just something I sense, when it's, yeah. The reason I'm asking is because I'm planning on running a Marshall Major 200 watts. Oh, I see. And Fryette maximum input is 200 watt. Ooh, I don't want to guess on that. That would be something I would recommend you speak to Fryette about. Whether or not that's a really, a Marshall Major is a beast. And 200 watts of Marshall Major is probably more like 240 or 50 watts, if you're really pushing it, peak. And I don't know if the Fryette load is, you don't want to see smoke coming out of it one day. So that's a question for Stevie, for sure. I would ask him. Now, things you can do to be safe. You could run it on a Variac down to 90, which I like the sound of anyway. And that's going to cut the wattage considerably. Probably down to, I'm guessing, but it'll probably knock 40 or 50 watts off if you run the voltage that low. You'd have to bias it properly if you want the best sound. But that would be one thing you could do to kind of, a little more in the zone. It depends a lot on the pedals you're using and also your guitar pickups and like if you're really cranking the amp, how hard you're pushing, if you're only turning it up to like 3 or something, and you're just using it for pedals and lots of clean headroom, you'd probably be okay. If you're really maxing out the amp, which I can't imagine, but maybe that's the sound you like, and you just want to attenuate it. It's a tall order for, you know, you could run 2 attenuators, like, you know, 2 speaker jacks out into a couple, you know, reactive loads, just kind of split almost like you were running into 2 cabinets, you know. I guess you'd set the amp for 4 ohms and run into 2 8-ohm loads. But speak to Stevie about that. He'll tell you. He's got his show, and, you know, just send an email to their customer service. Ever have a guitar that you hate, but it records awesomely, so you continue to try and adapt to it? Sure, you know, the sound of an instrument is really important, and, like, not every guitar has it all. Some are tough players, but it's just like, that's the sound I want, man. My Telly isn't the greatest player, my 66. It's got kind of a weird neck. It's a little fatter at there was something weird going on at Fender in 66. After Leo left, things were off the rails a little bit, and it's a great guitar, but, you know, it's still lacquer. It's pre when they started going to poly and all that good stuff. But it does have an odd neck shape where it's a little thicker at the nut, and then it gets thinner as you go up the neck, and that bothers me a little bit. And the neck's a little gooey. It's not that like the best player, but man, does that guitar ever have a 3D sound. It's part of it is to do with these great Ron Ellis pickups that he made for me to put in there, because the pickups were a little fried when I got the guitar. But you know, I'll play it and kind of fight it a little bit for the sound, because sometimes it's just the perfect sound. You know, when I play that guitar, generally in videos, on video demos and stuff, people are like, that guitar sounds great, you know. And so, you know, this is some of our instruments, you know. Now there might be, you know, something you can do to make it play better. You didn't even say that it doesn't play good. You just said you hate it. Maybe you hate the way it looks or something. Or maybe it's just the body shape or something's odd to you. But anyways, yeah, if it sounds good, use it as a studio instrument and just kind of, you know, grin and bear it, like when you're cutting with it, to get the tones. Have you met Tom Bukovac? Just on Dave's show. Once he was on Dave Friedman and Mark's show, you know, and Tone Talk, and we connected and had a little chat, you know, on there. We were on the same time, but I've never met him in person. He's a terrific guitar player. One of my good buddies' music school was completely blind and played bebop on a pink Charvel with a Floyd Rose. Cool. I like it. Honest question, since you've played some huge shows, do you ever have fans that sing so loud from the ground stage it actually can be ears on stage loudly? In the ground stage, it actually can be ears on stage loudly. Well, I mean, some crowds are incredible. South America comes to mind. You know, they sing guitar solos, right? If you watch the Rush in Rio or whatever it's called, there's a concert video of Rush in Brazil, and you can hear them singing every note, you know, to the you know, it's crazy. So yeah, that's pretty cool. In-ears block a lot. It's part of what I don't like about them. But if you've got good audience mics, I guess you can mix those in and hear the crowd. But I love that stuff, man. You know, people singing, and just the louder the better to me. It's so much fun. But yeah, you can. I mean, and yeah, different audiences in different parts of the world are certainly, South America is probably the loudest. Digital modeling with a billion sounds or good amp that crushes a couple amazing tones. I mean, both have their place, I suppose. You know, I'm more of an amp guy, but the modelers, you know, for those that are, you know, if you live in an apartment and you got to make a record, you know, if you're destined, you know, you just want to work and you want to get things done. I mean, you know, my buddy Quist, who does YouTube, he's got a great YouTube channel. He's Axe Effects almost all the time. He does have an amp that he uses a little bit, but he's primarily using that Axe Effects to do years of work, you know. And it's all about, at the end of the day, it's about the body of work and what you do. So, you know, I think there's no right answer to that, is I guess what I'm getting at. It depends on the situation and what it is you're trying to do. Some people just don't have the option of, miking an amp or, but they get great work done with modelers. So, yeah. Preston says, I find that when I use a modeler, I try and get close to my own sound. I don't use a traditional guitar speaker with my Jet City. What do you use? I wonder. Is it like a car stereo speaker? Maybe you're like, I've got 16 car stereo speakers mounted in what was a 412 with a new baffle. That'd be cool. Something different. Yeah. Have you ever tried a modeler into a Fryette power station? I mean, sort of. For instance, the guitar player from Deftones, he uses a Helix into Fryette power amps. It's not the power station, it's their racks, 2 rack-based power amps. But he has a deadly guitar sound. I got to actually play through his rig for a second when I was helping troubleshoot something. So that's interesting. I think definitely there's something to the like modeler into tube power amp thing. It gives it a little of, the damping and the pushback from the... It tends to just add a little bit of, a cool thing. It's not 100% necessary, but it's definitely cool to experiment with. I think that's why he does it. He's got a great sound. Yeah. What else we got here? No hockey. Did you get kicked out of Canada? I left on my own accord. But it's not like I wasn't a hockey fan. I used to go to Oilers games in well, I'm not going to say when. During the Dynasty. And the last time they won the Stanley Cup, I was at that game. And the city went insane. It was one of the coolest things I've ever witnessed. Gretzky had already left, and so everybody was sad. But the following year after he left, they lost the cup, and that was a drag. It's like, oh, it's over. And then they won the next year, and that was a big friggin' deal because they won without Gretzky. It was huge. City shut down. It was incredible. Yeah. You should have went with Nick to Guitar Center. He posted a video of himself looking for a guitar for tour. I think you're saying he knew zero about guitar. I think he plays though. We're still, I haven't gotten into rehearsals yet, so we'll get into rehearsals and then all will be revealed, man. But I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun. What else we got here? Actually, funny thing is, Blackmore was so meticulous about his tone that John Lord had to catch up to him. Didn't stop with the treble and high mids in his tone. I think Blackmore, it's funny because he's one of those guys that a lot of people think it's the Marshalls and the Strat, when it was actually many times a 335 and an AC30. What he used in the studio wasn't necessarily what he went out and played live with. So, I'm sure he used the Strat and do an AC32, but listen to Burn and tell me it's not an AC30. It's totally an AC30. It sounds like an AC30, It's a gained up, boosted AC30, and it's such a cool sound. I don't have any proof of that, but I can just tell by the sound. What's underrated about LA? That's a great question. The thing about LA, a lot of people will come here, and if they only come here once, twice, even 3 times, they don't really experience it because they'll go to West Hollywood and then go home. Or they'll go to West Hollywood and then go to Disneyland and go like, I don't know, it was kind of, But LA is, you got to get out. And like, it's a massive city that's almost like a collection of cities. So depending on where you are, you can have a very different experience, It's like a whole bunch of cities put together. And as a matter of fact, some of them are their own cities. I mean, when you're in Burbank or you're in Glendale, these are their own cities, their own police force, their own trash collection, their own. So, the difference between Santa Monica, for example, and LA can be felt distinctly when you're on either side of Rose, which is a street in Santa Monica. One side is LA and the other side becomes Santa Monica. And it's like very different because one city is a little more controlled and together, and LA is a little bit more chaotic. So you can literally, it's a block that separates. One side is, you're in LA, and the other side you're in Santa Monica. It's very different. So, a lot of people complain about LA, like it's dirty, or it's this, or it's that. But it's like, man, you really got to get out and get around, If you haven't been, if you come to LA, and you haven't experienced Burbank, Pasadena, Santa Monica, Hermosa Beach, and then like, Boyle Heights and I don't know, Montebello or East LA, or like there's like these neighborhoods that are very distinct. I love Highland Park. It's great. Silver Lake Echo Park, obviously. Atwater, so cool. But all these places are different, and a lot of them butt right up against one another. But when you go between them, you'll find different. Downtown's really cool. I mean, the whole kind of it's that evolved over the last 15 years or so and became really cool. Different areas, and parts of it are super rough, and parts of it are not, and they can be like a few blocks apart too. I love Little Tokyo. If you've never been to Little Tokyo, it's just a few square blocks, but it's super cool. So it's all these things, and it can be overwhelming. Like, how would you see all that? How would you know where to go when you get here? That's the thing. How do you know where you belong and where where you don't want to be, and it's different for everybody. So, but I love LA still, I really, really love it. And I love where I live, and, it still feels like home to me, and I feel happy there. So that's all I need to know, people talk a lot of crap about LA, but a lot of it's garbage and not based in any reality, or, it's like, and if you're in LA, I swear to God, and you're like, I hate it where I am, just go to a different part of town, because there's a better part where you'll like it. I've got friends that really like Orange County too. They don't like LA that much, but they're not far. They're only like 45 minutes south, and they're down in Fullerton or something, and they really like it down there. Or they're in Anaheim, or they're in Irvine, or it's just like, I don't know. Yeah, Peter Laces. New microphone. What you got? It's a Soyuz. It's called a 1973. Incredible condenser mic for recording guitar. Just sounds great. Great all on its own. Great mix with a 57 too. Totally into it. It sounds really good. Bent Tom says, I miss Daddy's Junkie Music. I remember that place. They used to advertise in all the guitar magazines, right? I remember it in Vintage Guitar. I haven't thought about that for a long time. Dr. Joe says he recently got his hands on a DCX Boost by Origin. Most interesting overdriver EQ device they hit the market recently. You did a great demo. Thanks. Origin has a ton of great pedals, man. And they do, try and do interesting things that not everybody's doing. They have their Tube Screamer style, they've got their Klon style, but the DCX is the one I think that is like a console style boost. And it's got a very, very good sound, unique sound. You can watch my video and see what you think. Here's a super chat. Pet in the UK says, what blows your mind about Tommy Emmanuel's playing? Interested in your thoughts as a guitarist. I haven't explored it that much, to be honest, but I catch stuff on YouTube and see him and stuff, and he's pretty friggin' mind-blowing. There's so many great guitar players out there, though. It's like, that guy's just like, maybe it's how effortless he's, when I see him, he seems like he's always smiling. He's a little like Eddie Van Halen. He's just pulling off all this incredible stuff and smiling. And, well before he was ever known, he had to be just phenomenal sitting there doing it. Like, it's just in his, there's that Van Halen comparison where he just sounds like a guy that sat on the edge of the bed for like 8 hours a day for a long time and played guitar. And it's like part of his body, So I guess that's the thing. When we see guitarists where it's just coming out of them, then it seems so natural. Maybe that's the thing, and that blows my mind about Mike Landau or Beck or any of these guys that have their own thing and they just sound like the guitar is part of their physical being. And Tommy's got his own version of that that's really amazing, from what I've seen. Yeah. Okay. I'm so far behind here in the chat, and I'm sure I've missed super chats, I think. So I'm going to go down and find some of them. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I got to them all. Let me know if I did miss any. Todd Roy says, I think I actually cried when Gretzky got traded to LA. Yeah, it was a dark, that was he wasn't happy about it. I know that, with the way the deal went down, and it was a weird time in Edmonton, but I guess it had to end. Not all everything comes to a natural conclusion. But it was a special time in hockey when, for a guy that's not a sports guy, I do remember what it was like to have a team that was unstoppable, my hometown team, and this source of civic pride, and also a time when it seemed like it was about the game and not so much about money. Maybe that's naive to say, but Gretzky's trade was $18 million, which by modern standards is peanuts, I think, as far as big sports trades, go. But it was the first of its kind at that point in the NHL, and it seemed like, big money, like money finally. I mean, I remember the owner of the Oilers, Peter Pocklington. I remember him taking that guy was like a little, what's the term, persona non grata. he got a lot of hatred for that, and it did seem like it was about the team and a little like a band, they were like a gang. They were like, this badass. It was all the other guys too, McSorley and Yari Curry and, they were just like a Semenko, the enforcer. Like if anybody that remembers, you'll remember these names, these guys, Grant Fewer, they were such a team, and it just seemed like they all convert. It was like magic, they all got together and made this amazing thing, and we're like unstoppable with Gretzky kind of at the helm. Mark Messier, it's interesting. But what do I think of the LA scene versus Nashville? I think that Nashville is a number of scenes, so I think that the Nashville, I think there's the, there's a indie rock scene in Nashville, that's very, very cool, that, I find interesting. There's also the kind of more traditional, try and get songs recorded by big artists scene where people get together and demo and, songwriters and that whole thing. So it just depends what you're talking about. Then there's the live scene, which is like, guys that, go out and tour, they leave on a Thursday, they play Friday, Saturday, they come back on Sunday, and they're part of that scene, which is a totally different thing than the guys that record and write songs and work in the studios. So it's a number of different scenes. It's a little more compartmentalized, maybe. LA, the scene in LA, what is the scene? I mean, I think that there's a number of different kind of musical things that go on here, and there's nights and jam nights and clubs that have, themes and things that are happening. They're kind of cool. But when I think scene, as far as like working in LA, there's a lot of tours based out of here, pop tours, rock tours. That's at least the world that I'm kind of been in. And it's a little different, tours tend to base out of here. You get the gig here, you audition here, you do a series of rehearsals here, and then you get on a bus and head out on the road. It's a little different than Nashville and the kind of weekend hit style touring that they do and stuff. So it's just different. It's a little more haphazard here than Nashville, which was maybe a little more defined, I think. Nashville this is just I could be way off, but I think Nashville's a little bit more by the book. Like, this is how we do things out here. LA's a little more all over the map, like where no two gigs are the same. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think maybe if you've got a Nashville gig, be it touring or studio or whatever, predictable from gig to gig, maybe a little more. Like, what happened on the last one? It's a similar thing. We're doing a similar style of touring. The money's similar. The way that they do their business is a little more similar. In LA, it can be. Don't get used to one way of doing things out here, because you'll get another gig and then it won't. Well, this isn't what happened on the last. We were in this other kind of hotel on the last, or the money can be vastly different, or just different. It's a little all over the map out here. So I don't know if that's accurate at all, but that's just my take from what I know. Yeah. The good old Burgundy Room, Christian says. Burgundy Room and El Compadre across from GC in Hollywood were my favorite bars when wife lived there. Burgundy Room is awesome. That was definitely one of my favorite bars. Still stop in there every now and then, but it's not quite the same as it used to be, but it's still pretty similar. It's still very dark and very red in there, and they just don't light the bar on fire like they used to. Anybody used to go to the Burgundy Room on a Tuesday night when they'd pour lighter fluid all over the bar and set it on fire? That was cool. Always playing Ace of Spades. Whole bar would light up. I don't think the fire marshal would like that now. It was the 90s. It was a different time. Nobody ever got hurt, I don't think. Oh, my misspent youth. Yeah. People always talk crap about the big cities. They are so large that they contain multitudes. Yeah, it can be a little... I mean, I'm sure, hey, there's good and bad about everywhere, but it can be hard to get a handle on, maybe for people if they're, you know... Like here, Bent Tom's ripping on San Francisco. It is pretty bad right now. I mean, from what we all understand, it's unfortunate, and hopefully they can get a handle on it. Some of their problems and stuff, and figuring it out. It's a difficult, he says I'm not gonna light that one up, Bent Tom, but yeah, talking about somebody doing something bad on the sidewalk. As long as I remember, we used to stay at the Phoenix as bands. That was the band hotel in San Francisco, the Phoenix. And a great swimming pool, cool rooms. It was awesome. I loved staying. It was like going home, Any tours I did, 99, 2000, 2001, 2, 3, we were always staying at the Phoenix. It was like the band hotel. And it was in the Tenderloin. Still there, I'm sure. And the Tenderloin is gnar. And it was like totally gnarly back then. Like, totally gnarly. I remember staying at a hotel just down the street from the Phoenix, which sucked. We were like, wow, why can't we be at the Phoenix? But it was literally 2 blocks further south, down whatever street that is. I remember having our van and trailer, and it was like 2 PM. We're checking in the hotel, and our bass player gets propositioned by a prostitute on the street right in front of the... It's like we're just checking into the hotel at 2 PM, and I think the comment was, "Hey, do you want to go in the back of the trailer and mess around?" Like our band trailer. Sorry, I hope there's not any. This is a family show, but anyway, that actually happened in the Tenderloin. I remember that clearly. Poor Peter, our bass player. I haven't thought about that in a while. But that's the Tenderloin, and it was then, 20 years ago. Now, I know it's getting worse, I know it's, the Union Square and stuff. I know it's supposed to be pretty bad, but I don't know. Big cities. It's tough. The United States is a tough place because it's like if there's a lot of people that live in this place that are one step away from, one paycheck away, right? And we saw a lot of that in the pandemic. And I think that that the pandemic hit certain people really hard. Other people did okay. But if you're one paycheck away from problems, right? That was a tough time in a lot of big cities for a lot of people that were, with high rent and high whatever, and so I don't want to get too into that. That's not what we do here. We talk about guitars and stuff, but right, it was just a difficult thing, and I think it's been a hard for certain places to come back from that, and for certain people, that were living right on the hairy edge, to bounce back, and it's understandable. So, what's underrated about Japan? You made me like LA more. What's underrated about Japan? I don't think anything's underrated about Japan, to be honest. Like, everybody talks about how great it is and loves it. It's one of my favorite places on earth, just because people are so smart and friendly and into their thing and hardworking and helpful. And so the people maybe is the number one thing that people should recognize about Japan. It's a very special, they're special people, special culture. They're awesome. But man, there ain't nothing that I can't rave about enough, when it comes to Japan. I mean, the food, the guitar culture is incredible. It's so cool. So it's a very special place. Yeah. Okay. Michael Landau blows my mind. Me too. Let's just give it up for Mike. He's just incredible. I really love the Star Spangled Banner album. If you haven't listened to that, listen to that. And I really love that. I feel like his genius really comes across on that record pretty well for a studio recording. There's nothing like seeing him live, but I love that album. It's so good. The tunes are just great. Yeah. Jason says I've never played bad electric pickups. Like the pickups in the guitar, the actual, like, I've played some that I find just are sort of flat or too hot or too, my main problem with pickups is generally there's a lack of clarity many times, I find. sometimes just too dark and hot, sometimes too weak and dark, sometimes too bright. And yeah, I started to realize that I'm not as big of a fan of Alnico 5 humbuckers a while ago, although they can have their place, I guess. But like Alnico 5 PAF, I think I sort of prefer 2s now, at least in the bridge. In the neck, great. Like, I'm talking about bridge pickups right now. My pickup is an Alnico 5 7 point something K, for the neck. That's the Thorn bucket neck. It's killer because it's got a little more clarity in top. But in the bridge, they can be a little bright. That's all. So, New York City versus LA versus Nashville for music. I think most of my friends that live in New York, guys like Joel Hoekstra, I mean, they seem to work a lot in... he's doing other stuff now, but for a long time he was doing Rock of Ages and, a lot of, those theater gigs seems to be a thing in New York with my friends that live out there. New York is, I always say, like, you can't fake it there. Like, there's a lot of people in LA, they're like, oh, I'm a musician or I'm an actor or whatever, but they've got another job and they don't really, it's gotten tougher once again since pandemic and stuff, things changed, but that was always kind of traditionally, it's like, in LA you can kind of fake it a little bit and skate by. That ain't none of that going on in New York, I don't think. Like, you just have to make money if you're living in that, because it's expensive. It gets cold in the winter. It's a different. It strikes me as a little daunting. Living there and trying to make a living. But I've got friends that do it. Got a few friends that do it. Let's see. You should hear that clip where Lando plays on Seal's A Little Crazy. We're never gonna survive on this. I saw 95% of every game Ron Hextall played before he got to the Flyers. And that's all as many Flyers names. He was one of my favorite. Ron Hextall, that guy, people hated him in Edmonton. I remember that. Now we're back on hockey again. Wasn't he on the, he was on the, Calgary, right? So on the Flames. People used to go, Hextall, the whole crowd when he was out. People really disliked him in Edmonton, but that's just part of that's sports. I'm sure he's a great guy. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Love you guys are all talking about hockey now in the chat. I just got to that part of the chat. I guess I better move it along. Reza, what's up? Just want to support your coffee addiction. I need it. And keep reminding everyone that's pronounced boutique, not boutique in French. Boutique. Oh, boutique, not boutique. I guess I say boutique. Boutique. But boutique. Boutique. Right. A boutique. I say both. Depending. I like to move fluidly between my boutique and my boutique. Why don't you tour with Helix or FM9? Super chat there. I have actually toured with both. Not an FM9 per se, but I toured with Axfex many years ago. Melissa Etheridge did whole tours with her with Axfex. And the Helix I've used for all kinds of stuff, man. Clinic tours, I did a whole clinic tour with the PT-15 and Helix for effects, HX effects. So I do. I'm an equal opportunity employer. Employer of gear. There's a super chat there, and I got to grab that in a second. But let's see, it's 1:26. I'm going to stick around for another half hour because I started late. So we're going to be here for a little while. Here's Chris talking about the Tenderloin. There were people in ski masks on the prowl. It's a rough neighborhood, It's a really rough neighborhood. I remember that. But I love San Francisco, man. It's like I still walk around there. I don't know. I'm not scared of cities, man. I just, don't walk around with your wallet hanging out and looking like you. I don't know. I got beat up once. I got jumped in Hollywood by a bunch of rich boys. That's the funny part. I had to go to the emergency room. I got a scar above my eye from having to get stitches. But these guys, they were a bunch of rich they were partying in a club and they were drunk and they were just like a bunch of frat dudes. That's who I got jumped by in Hollywood. You think of the stereotypical like whatever's going to happen. That's not what happens. It's like homeless people or sure, people can be desperate and that can lead people to do bad things and stuff like that. But for the most part, they don't want you know what I mean? This is just what I think, but they don't want the attention of the cops and the attention. They're just trying to get by, and the craziest. And of course, people are nuts. There's lots of, mental problems and stuff like that as well. But just my experience getting jumped, the only time that I ever got attacked, and it was really crappy, was a bunch of jerks that were just, in the, hanging out in my neighborhood. This was in East Hollywood back in the 90s. But, I was in a band that was fairly successful in LA at the time. And the manager of the band was also the promoter of a club called the Opium Den in Hollywood. And the Opium Den was the place to be back then for a few years. I mean, Hugh Hefner used to come to there every week with his own table in the back. You can imagine, right? Wednesday nights at the Opium Den. And there'd be a lineup all the way down the block of people, great bands, and original bands. And then there was a great rock cover band that would close out the night. And it was just like a happening night in Hollywood for a while. So anyway, I was in the Opium Den one night. And I was with a bass player in a band I was in. I was in a few bands at the time, but one of the bands I was in, I was with a bass player. And I remember leaving and walking down the street. And all of a sudden, just around the corner from the club, my friend was face down on the sidewalk all of a sudden. Well, what happened? These guys had run from behind and pushed him down. Well, it was a case of mistaken identity is what it is. They thought we were the band playing in the club that night. The singer that played in this cover band, he used to heckle a lot from the stage. So I think they were pissed because this guy, this is what I could ascertain after piecing together what they said. They're like, oh, they thought we were other guys, but we weren't in the band. They were just drunk and stupid. And I was like, whoa, we got no beef with you guys. I said something like that. And they were like, you want some too? And then all of a sudden I had three guys coming at me, just boom, 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 boom. And I got it was like, the slow motion Rocky, head going down to the, it's not like you get hit, it doesn't really hurt, right? I don't know if anybody out there been punched, but there wasn't really any pain. It was just, I just remember going down, and then a car came or something. These guys ran away and they yelled some stupid stuff. And that's how I was able to figure out who they thought we were and stuff. But anyway, they were just jerks that were like rich, jock dudes. And that's what happened to me. So, and I was freaked out by that for a long time because I was like, whoa, I had a healthy kind of, but I'm kind of glad that that's what happened and that it wasn't, because it's like, if it had been, I'm just glad that that's what happened, that it was like, yeah, it's not always what you think it's going to be. You know what I mean? It's not the typical, like what people are scared of or whatever. I'm not really scared of cities. I mean, I just keep to myself now and I know how to I've lived in LA a long time and, anything bad can happen at any moment, It's like we could all get struck by lightning. So I just don't worry about it. I like big cities and I like big American cities and that ain't going to change. Super chat there from ESL's Super Tips. I've just figured out my favorite guitarists now are all Canadian. My number one, Jeff Waters. That guy's amazing. Jason Hook, he's great. Phil X, he's great. How come you're also great? It's too cold, so we just stay inside all the time and practice. That's what I always say. And we got a healthy appreciation of rock and roll up there, still. I mean, really healthy appreciation of rock music in Canada. I always was very proud of that. Like when bands had come through, we would, the crowds were great and everybody would be like, man, Canadian audiences are, really just into it. So, Eric says he's totally scared of cities. Don't be scared, dude. Just go out and find yourself a city to believe in. So, yeah. Yeah, rich boys jumped you. They did, man. They did. They were driving an expensive truck. They jumped in it and drove away. And I made my way back to the club, and I looked like the Elephant Man at that point. I was like bleeding like like profusely, and your face bleeds a lot when you get ripped open. That didn't look very good. And the club owner and the manager and everybody freaked out, and they went after the guys. He took two bouncers that looked like Mike Tyson, and just, I'm going to go find those guys, because they probably thought maybe they were going to go eat or something around, or, and they went out hunting for them, but they couldn't find them. And I felt very, like they're taking care of me. The guys at the club, the door guy was this dude that was probably, 240 pounds and like this big Samoan guy. And he was like a sweetheart. He was a super cool guy. When he saw me, I came around the corner. He's like, what the hell happened? And it had just been just enough around the corner. And they all just burst into action and tried to go after these guys and stuff. Because I didn't have a fighting chance. There was 3 dudes coming at me, and I'm not a fighter. So it was like, it was a crappy thing that happened. But anyways, yeah. Okay, what else we got? Let's see. I got into a fight at NAMM, really, at the Hilton just by the front doors. A girl I was with, her ex tried to grab her. Wow. The NAMM show, there's a lot of boozing going on and a lot of people and a lot of, I could see that happening. But, yeah. Let's see. My city has a lot of homeless, but crime is pretty much the same as most places. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, what else we got here? Let's see. What advice do you have for mixing 2- and 3-part guitar harmonies? Thin Lizzy and Boston. I do a little bit of that, and I love it. Do you generally use different guitars, amps for each guitar? No, not really, but you know what I'll do is I'll add less delay to the harmonies, just to keep things neat, because it can start to get a little cloudy. And sometimes different pickups. So generally I'll use the same guitar because I almost want it to be like a bunch of the same part, almost like a singer harmonizing with themselves in the studio. But I might use different pickups, and I might use a slightly cleaner sound. Like I'll let the main fundamental guitar part be the lead singer, and the other ones are harmonies, And so a little less delay, pan them out a little bit with the fundamental one up the middle. And that's just what I do. So maybe different pickups, maybe different... I don't really change the amp and stuff. Yeah. Generally, when I go, a harmony would be perfect here, I'm on a kick, and then I'm trying to find the right notes, and then I just lay the parts down. So I don't... It's kind of funny. You made me think about it. It's like I don't really switch the amp up or stuff. Maybe if I was doing a record, I might do that, if I was putting a little more time. But when I'm on the fly and just getting demos done for videos that you see me... I mean, I do harmonies in some of my, pedal demos and stuff. So... that's how I might approach it. Just switch the pickup, and then when I'm mixing, I don't add as much echo or anything to the harmonies. Still a little, but just half as much, as the main voice. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. See, this is true, too. I grew up in Roswell, a small town where I spent a lot of time fighting as a kid. I think there can be just as much of that kind of thing in small towns, right? Right? So, let's see. Preston says, I used a 12-inch Black Widow speaker for Jet City. Loud and heavy. That's a PV, right? The Black Widows? Isn't that a PV speaker? Brian, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. My life growing up in small town was music and trying to avoid fights. Yeah, I mean, that goes on everywhere, I think. Eh? Like, I mean, I talked to, it was interesting talking to Wayne, who's the bass player in the Classic Rock Show, about growing up in England and the mods and rockers. And, you literally, he was trying to explain classic rock to me in England and what that means. And how some people don't consider The Who classic rock, because if you grew up as a mod, it wasn't. It was a different kind of music. So he was like, to some folks, when we play Who in our set, when we play Who songs, they're a little like, And I didn't understand that, because in America, we're like, The Who. It's like one of the greatest classic rock bands. But mods, rockers, we all saw Quadrophenia and stuff. And it's interesting. So, but he said that, it was almost, come to blows, like, on your way to school over bands you liked and stuff, he was talking about fighting and being in, almost gang-like mentality of mods rockers. Was Chris Cornell able to walk around town on tour? Did he get recognized? That's a great question. He's kind of private anyway. He kind of kept to himself anyway. He didn't go out a lot, like in my experience, to go eat. And, sometimes I'd be like, hey, let's go get food, and he'd be like, oh, like that was a weird idea to him, kind of, like, not weird, but I'd talk him into it. Then we'd go and we'd have fun, but it was rare. It wasn't like, I think he kind of stayed, he was the kind of guy that would go to, his hotel room and then, just hang out there, by himself kind of thing. He liked that. I don't know. It was just, he wasn't, it's not that he wasn't social, because you get him talking, he was fascinating, but he was like, on tour, he could tend to be a bit of a loner, I guess. So, getting recognized, probably. I mean, he always had security. He had security concerns, There was people that would threaten him and his family and stuff, and, so he always had somebody with him. And so generally speaking, when, you were going places with him, it was a planned thing, kind of organized. But there was a few times, where I can remember one of the funniest times, man. I remember we went for lunch when we were rehearsing, not far from here in the valley. And we went to there's a great little Mexican place on the corner of Magnolia and what's the street? Coldwater Canyon, I think, in a strip mall. And we went in there and got tacos. Just like a little one of those valley kind of strip mall, Mexican restaurants. And we went in and we ordered a bunch of tacos and stuff. We're sitting there eating. It was me and the drummer, Jason Sutter. It was I think Corey was there, a bass player, and I think Cornell, and a guy that was doing Pro Tools at the time with us, Scott. And we're all sitting there, and Dave Grohl came in. And he was like, hey, what's going on? And it was like, God, what are the odds these two Seattle guys are going to meet in a North Hollywood taco place, like a hole in the wall. But it was so cool. And then years later, like, I remember Dave ended up directing the video for My Crooked Steps from the next Soundgarden album that ended up coming out a few years later. So, anyways, and yeah, we could go to a place like that and nobody'd bother Chris, generally. I never saw anybody actually, like, I can't remember a time in public where anybody ever, like, lost their shit and, like, gave him, it generally was cool. So, my thoughts, what are my thoughts on tuning issues with different gauge strings? My Les Paul is fine with 10s or 11s, but not great with 9s. Interesting. Could just be the added tension over the bridge and the nut or something holds the string a little more stable. Maybe it slips a little more with a little less tension. Try just having a tech look at the nut. Make sure the nut is cut right for 9s, that there's not too much, the slots aren't super wide or whatever's going on with the nut. The break angle is right, and coming out of the nut. An important thing on a Les Paul or any Gibson with the fan strings and the shorter scale and stuff is the nut. The nut's got to be just right on a Les Paul. It's a good thing to, spend some money on a great tech, have them cut a good one that's just perfect for your guitar, with tuning in mind and stuff. And I've literally had a guitar transformed by changing, Les Paul that just was driving me nuts that I didn't want to play anymore because it wouldn't stay in tune. Got a new nut, and then it was so much better. I was like, oh, finally I can play this thing. So, yeah, important, David says, finally home at the right time to catch this live. That's awesome, man. Cornwall. Fantastic. Thanks for all you do, and honesty you do. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, let's see here. You can't get more classic rock than The Who live at Leeds. I totally agree. That's our American take, but it's interesting, the mods rockers things. Anybody here from England can speak to that at all? Like, that was Wayne's take on it, you know, Thin Lizzy, man. I'm a rocker. I'm a roller too, baby. He was laying it down the gauntlet. I'm a rocker. That's what I am. Not a mod. Yeah, I'd love to know what people think. Okay. Tacos with Chris and Dave. That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. Did you ever play with Dave Grohl? No, I haven't. Actually, I would love to at some point. Really would love to in some capacity. I've only met him a few times. He's always very, very nice. He's super cool. But I know a few of the other guys. I mean, Chris, you know, I'm friendly with, and we text sometimes and talk about guitar. Pat Smear, I've known for 20 years. I helped his wife figure out how to do a work visa, probably 2001. And so I've known him forever. And Rami, the keyboard player, known him for many years as well too. But yeah, Dave is, and now Josh. I know Josh because I toured with his brother, and so I'm got little Foo Fighters inroads all the way. But I've never gotten to jam with Dave. I would love to at some point. Let's see here. Ben says, "Don't forget to hit the like. Yes, please spread this far and wide across the internet." Surf B says, "True, one paycheck away, scary." Yeah, one paycheck away from, yeah. That's no way to live. Gotta save that money. So if you've learned nothing today, remember to avoid the tenderloin. Well, I'm not saying avoid. I'm just saying be careful. But you might see some interesting stuff. I have a certain love of gritty cities. I mean, I think that, you know, New York, you know, probably before Times Square got cleaned up was pretty interesting. You know? And there was a certain, you know, like romantic, once, you know, it just moved in, it was basically like Disney, you know, once, you know, that happened to it, you lose a little certain something, you know, I don't know. I like gritty cities a little bit, you know, I do. Yeah. Do you ever run into Cantrell or Alice in Chains guys? I know Jerry a little bit. Because Dave Friedman's tight with him, and I've gotten to go to his really fun birthday party that I don't know if he does them anymore, but pre-COVID, he would have a great party at his house, and I went to a couple of those, and it was always fascinating. Jerry's birthday parties. At one point, I was sitting at a table with Steve Jones and Steve Perry. So you've got your Sex Pistols and Journey connection, and I'm eating, like, you know, barbecue chicken, you know, between these two guys, and that was pretty cool. Interesting party, you know. It'd always be Steve and Tyler, and you know, every rocker in town kind of show up, and always fun. So, and he's a nice guy. I haven't really spoken with him that much, but he'd always be very nice to have me to his birthday, and you know, I love his stuff. I mean, I love the way he plays guitar, and I love, you know, the video, for example, in my world, you know, I make videos about amps and stuff. The video he did for the Friedman amp was great, because his signature amp, because he just plays his classic riffs in it. There's like no lead guitar that I remember. It's all like Alice in Chains song riffs, and you can hear the amp. I was like, yeah, play chords. I love it. You know? So, Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous, amazing album. Agreed. So good. Just tuning in, what do you think of the new Stones song? Hey, I loved it. I like the video. I like the song. It's Rolling Stones. Come on. You gotta give it up. Appreciate them. Let's see. I'm from England. To me, the Who are mods, rock, I guess, but I put them in the mod category. See? There we go. Tell us more about that. Explain to us the difference between mods and rockers. The Rolling Stones had that issue. Bowie as well, mods and rockers. See, I would say that Bowie was, I could be wrong, a little more mod, and Rolling Stones definitely rockers. When was mods versus rockers early thing? Early 70s. How old are you people? We're old. Yeah, 70s, 80s. 70s into the 80s probably. I think, man, it's an interesting discussion. What else we got here? Let's see. Just heads up, Ben says he's live tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's 5 p.m. my time in a few hours. Check out Ben's show for all the lowdown on what's going on in Canadian guitar world. Ben has Steve from Boston on tonight. Check it out. There's a super chat there. Thank you for that. Appreciate all your super chats today, guys. Big props to Sir and Fryette. They fixed my reactive load IR out of warranty and PS100 within warranty, respectively, super quickly, based in the UK. That's awesome. Excellent. 368 watching and 175 likes. WTF, show Pete some love. Please hit the like button if you haven't. Helps keep the show going. And what time is it? 1:48. I'm going to hang another 15 or so, and then I'm going to split. I like this. Bent Tom says, Steve Jones, Steve Perry, and Steve Thorn. That's right. That's the way that went. Chris Shiflett seems like a cool dude to have a beer with. Agreed. Yeah. I've been watching his podcast. So good. He's doing great stuff. Shred with Shifty. Really good. I enjoyed it as well. So you met Jerry's hairless cats. I don't think so. I would remember that. I think probably they were put away for... There was a lot of people coming through the house at that point, so I don't remember a hairless cat. Do you remember a club called the Gasworks? I remember the name, but I've never been there on Yonge Street. I don't... Those classic Toronto clubs... I didn't really make it to Toronto until the early 2000s for any music-related stuff. What do I remember there? I've been to the El Macombo, I think, and what was the other? Or no, shit, I'm forgetting the name of the classic Toronto, the Horseshoe Tavern. I was there. Is that still there? I think it might be. But those are some of the, but yeah, I didn't, I spent a lot of time in Vancouver. So like, Richards on Richards, I remember, the Roxy, like those clubs. But I was kind of West Coast, so I didn't get out to Toronto as much until I started kind of my proper touring days in the early 2000s and stuff. So I missed the boat a little bit. Yeah. I don't think anyone outside of England gives a damn if they're mods or not. Yeah, but it does have an impact on if you're going to play. It's interesting. It's just like when we play Classic Rock Show. I mean, everybody loves it now. It's kind of like all. But Wayne tried to describe it to me, and when somebody that lives somewhere is like, look, here's the thing about here and playing this song, and then they tell you culturally what's going on and why some people in the audience might not respond to it as well. It's interesting, when you're playing a show for 1,000, 2,000 people or whatever, and you're in the UK, and you got a certain segment of that audience that would have considered a song not their deal, whereas in the US we're like, this is awesome, but they weren't. You know what I mean? On the same tip, you might wonder, like, why is that one not going over as good over here? Was it just not a hit, or was it? And there's actually something deeper culturally. I find that stuff interesting. Yeah. Give Me Shelter was about mods and rockers. That's interesting. See, I wasn't aware of that. Didn't think about it. Really can't decide Helix or FM9. Well, what do you guys think? I mean, FM9, they're both an ecosystem, and you should look at the editor. You should listen to videos. I think you can do the job with both. It's a good problem to not be able to decide. You're definitely going to be able to get a sound and do the job with either. Let's just be honest. I mean, I could probably do the rest of my days with either of those units and be just fine. So it's quality problems, and this is the world. We live in a world of abundance when it comes to guitar gear, and you're going to be fine with either thing. So now, I think that for me, it's easier to edit on the Helix itself than it is on the Axe-Fx. I find the controls and the screens and everything easier on the Helix. It's a little more basic and a little bigger. Once you hook up an editor, it doesn't really matter. So if you edit a lot on the computer, it doesn't make any difference. So I think Fractal has a great computer editor. Helix has a great computer editor. They do have sort of a signature sound. The Axe-Fx a little more. There's a little bit more of a character with the Fractal stuff that has a Fractal kind of sound to it. I don't know. So you have to decide if that's your thing. FM9 has an expression pedal, right? Doesn't it? I can't remember 100%. That's a decider for some people, probably. I mean, having the built-in expression. I just can't remember right now. I've got an FM3. I don't have an FM9. So, oh no, it doesn't, does it? You'd have to hook up a expression to it. So that's one thing. The Helix having the built-in pedal is pretty cool. They both sound good, though, The cabinet modeling for a while, I would say I would give the edge to Axe-Fx, but Helix actually redid their cabinet modeling. So the newest software, or whatever, it's probably 6 months ago now that they did that, but they came out with new cabinet modeling stuff in the Helix. It's very good now, I find. So that bit of a non-issue now. Used to be more. I used to feel like I had to load it with Celestians in order to like it. Wasn't really crazy about a lot of the cabs that the Line 6, factory stuff. And now I think it's much better. So, guitars for your project with the super chat there. Friedman, Jake 20, or Wildwood 20. I don't know what the difference is with the Wildwood. Growing tired of modelers, but still need versatility. Jake 20 to clean them up without losing volume. It's got a nice clean sound on it. It has a clean, So, I wish I could help a little bit further, but I can vouch by saying it's a killer sounding amp. I mean, it does sound really, really, really good. I just don't know what the specs on the Wildwood are. Anybody else here got one of those or new? Chris Shiflett seems like very humble. Yeah, I was at the Taylor Hawkins LA tribute show, and he did such a good job. And I sent him a message and said, dude, you were the MVP. I mean, he was on stage with so many different people that night. A lot of people coming in to guest and stuff, but he was the most probably up there for almost the entire show. I mean, at least probably as much as Dave. And he had to learn so many guitar parts, for like so many solos and stuff, that it was such a big, very impressive, how much stuff he had to tackle. Yeah. Let's see, Lee's Palace. That was a cool place. Yeah, Toronto. I remember that place. Toronto clubs. What else we got here? Let's see. It's down to the whole quadrophenia thing. People over here take it extremely seriously. It's a way of life for them. It's the Northern Soul scene. Northern Soul, right. Small Faces, bands like that. Interesting. Yeah, I hear people talk about Northern Soul in England, and I try and get a handle on. Anybody out there know about that outside of England? But it's a thing, and I'm trying to learn a little bit, And playing with Classic Rock Show, I've learned a little more about this stuff than I knew before 2020 or 2019. Have you listened to Mammoth 2? Not the whole way through. I haven't, actually, I must say. I have not. I lived in England for years and never once heard about the whole mods versus rock. Maybe you'd have to be of Wayne's age, He's like, early 50s. So, it has to be the old timers. Yeah, I don't know how old you are, but if you were around and listening to music in the 70s, early 80s, you might be more, aware of that whole, Early Who were mods. However, the mod fashion faded out from the mid-60s onwards. Peak of the mods and rockers fighting in Brighton was as long ago as 64. Interesting. That's interesting. I find the Beatles fashion too, like the kind of the Hamburg era and stuff when they were all in leather, and they look so like, like I mean they look like, like an early metal band or something when they used to wear all the leather, or maybe just like they were like obviously drawing influence from American rock and roll, but with the greased back hair and stuff like that, and a little more, but then they obviously totally revamped that from when they came out and released their first album, and that was an obvious decision, like you guys look too rock or something, you look too, gotta make you a little more, appealing to, don't look so tough or whatever, so I don't know if that was part of it too. It's kind of interesting, but I think all the people in Mods vs. Rock are either dead or dying off. Well, it was, yeah, look, I play in a show over there where there's a lot of folks, if not 70, pushing 70, sometimes north of 70. And Wayne was just trying to explain to me why some people might not dig certain songs that we play, and of that, there's a definite, I've made the argument, that where I would like to start playing more stuff that's into the 80s and 90s, a little bit, and not so old, some of the music that we play, I mean, it's like, classic rock that is, stuff that 40 and 50-year-olds would be, I think it would be good to continue just to widen the audience, because our audience is quite old. Depends where we play. I mean, if we play in London or if we play in, Manchester or something, there's a lot more younger people. But some of the other places that we play, it's a very old audience, which is amazing. I mean, I love it. I just think we should play for the biggest audience that we can, So maybe expanding, the songs a little bit. By 71 and Who's Next came out, Mods Were Forgotten. Mod Fashion only made it back after Quadrophenia movie, not the album. That's interesting. What is Mod Fashion? It's a little like the what do you call them? The windbreaker coats, the green coats, and it's like a certain hairstyle, and it's not leather, it's, what I'm talking, a little bit like you might see Liam Gallagher dress or something, right? In the, right? I mean, am I getting that right? Kind of like, watch Quadrophenia, I'm just trying to remember, like, what if you look at the Quadrophenia, album, or Quadrophenia isn't right on the cover. Here's a little Mod Fashion. See the guy in his long coat, and it's so bright that it's probably not coming through, but one of those long kind of parka coats, I don't know how else to describe it. There's Sting in the middle, right? In there with the, you know what I mean? It was like, or there's the cover of, the guy's in the jacket with the Who on the back, right? Yeah. And scooters, It's interesting. I think I got to split pretty quick. It's 2:00 when I set my alarm there. I'll go another 5 minutes or so, and then I'll split. Yeah. Okay. Northern Soul is a music and dance movement that emerged in Northern England in the late 1960s. It developed from the British mod scene based on a particular style of Black American soul music, and still continues to this day. Like, I know James from Classic Rock Show, he recently did an album that's like a Northern Soul kind of, new music, but it's kind of a tribute, throwback to that whole style. He's from Liverpool, so, yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to be sure. Time to bring Classic Rock Tour to the USA. That's the plan, I think it'll they want it to happen. I think it's just a question of when, probably, and then where and how. Can you say who's playing drums for Nick Carter? Sure, yeah, his name's Jake Hayden. Great drummer. Sweet guy. Never played with him before, hadn't met him, but I really like him. Great big feel. It's awesome. and he played with Missing Persons. He also played in a band called with Dorothy, the artist Dorothy. Yeah. Okay. Austin Powers is mod, right? Austin Powers is most definitely mod. Yeah. Mods are a more preppy look. Yeah, I guess so, yeah. A little more dressed up, Liam Gallagher is 100% mod, his hairstyle, everything. Very mod. The coats and the whole, in Manchester. And yeah. Sting was in Quadrophenia. He was, that's right. Frilly clothes, bright colors, big hair. Trench coat. Kind of trench coats, yeah. Yeah. No leather jackets going on. I feel like Chris Cornell could become invincible when he wanted. He was definitely one of the most fearless. He wasn't afraid to try things, Yeah. He'd rather crash and burn and go for it, He and so because of that, he really went for it, and it was great, I really loved it. His attitude on stage and stuff, and he was a lot of fun too on stage, So it was very comfortable up there for me. Very, very, very comfortable. Yeah. Let's see what else. What's the latest on your Patreon? Still discussing ways to go at it in the new year. Won't be till January or so that I figure out what I'm doing. But or the Beatles mod. I mean, they were kind of like when they came out. I feel like the Beatles were the Beatles. I feel like they kind of like. I mean, the Stones were rockers for sure, and the Beatles were like, but the Beatles weren't mod. I wouldn't, not really. Although they were from up there, but their music, they just evolved into their own thing. Beatles was its own phenomenon musically, I think. They were outside of everything. I mean, nobody was right. Like you can't compare them to anybody. I guess a lot of bands. I mean, the Who was, the Who sort of just aligned themselves with that a little more fashion-wise, and just part of a cultural. I think because probably Pete was interested in it, But a lot of speculation going on my part there. But Brian, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Did you check out the new Guild Polera Kimthale signature guitar? I have a little bit. Yeah. And there'll be more on that sometime soon. I think. We will talk more about that. Came out with a new signature model for Kim. When are you going to release your the suspense is killing me. Tone XIRs. Very soon. I'm sorry. I know that project just fell by the wayside a little bit because of tour, and I can't quite put into words exactly like how just the magnitude of the amount of music that I'm learning for this tour. So that's taken a lot of time. Plus, it all coincides with getting taxes done and many videos for many things. So I better go because I really have to go to the bathroom. But beyond that, I got to go and get other work done. I've got an amp sitting here. You can't see it because it hasn't come out yet, but I'm going to finish video for that today. So video for an amp coming Monday, another video for an amp coming Wednesday, and another one on Thursday, I think, is what's happening. So there's a lot of amp videos coming this week. I got pedals to do. I got so much to do. It's crazy. Tell you what. Can you talk Van Halen pickup height? I don't really know beyond what we can see. Like, for example, I've never changed it in this guitar, and let's assume that this is kind of what he liked, because I would assume that he would be pretty picky about such things. And it's not low and it's not high in this guitar. You know, the neck pickup is a little lower from the strings than but I would assume that it's I would say medium high height. You know, veering towards high, but not that high on the bridge pickup. It's not stuffed up against the strings or anything. So let's assume that that would be the best indication. I mean, Frankie too and stuff, we could look. I'm sure that was something they discussed. I want the pickup here, you know, so you could look at his signature guitars for a clue. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that was a really fun show. Thanks, guys, for being here. Guests coming soon, I think, you know, but nothing's booked and confirmed yet, so we'll see. But some fun stuff happening. Like I say, lots of amp videos coming this week. 3, I think. And then another sort of similar thing right the following week. So lots of YouTube stuff coming. Nice amps this week. Nice amps. There's cool stuff going on. Like every amp that I'm actually going to show this week in videos has some cool innovation happening, but yet throwback. It's all tube stuff. So tomorrow, the one I can, you know, it'd be the Driftwood amp. I'll give you a little taste of what the track sounds like, because it's fun. I had fun doing it. I think it's fun. Or is it? Is this it? Is that it? What did I do with it? Is this it? Must be this one. Nope, that's from a delay. I was just going to show you a little bit of it, but what the heck did I do with the video? Is it this one? No, it's a cat video. No, you want to see that one. Is it this one? Nope, that's something else. Don't you hate that when you know it's in your... Oh, wait, there it is, I think. Just want to show you the... Oh, God, this is so... Just wanted to show you a little bit of this damn video. That's not it. I know this is very interesting. I'm probably losing people by the minute here. But I'm going to find it. It's not that one. It's this one. Low gain, clean. And then I get into like ripping. Double bass. All right. I've given it all away. No, not totally. But anyways, that's for the Driftwood. Thanks for waiting around for that. Cool amp. More amps later in the week. All right, I'm rambling. I'm getting boring. I'm going to go. See you guys next Sunday. Please come back. Thank you for all your super chats. Love you all. Appreciate you. Take care.